The guy comes to his senses in an unfamiliar place, entangled in some strange wires. Nearby, a young girl sits, unresponsive to anything. At this moment, strange visions of some bunker and soldiers standing nearby flash before her eyes. The guy cannot believe himself. How did he end up in such a situation? But his attempts to convince himself that this is just a dream lead nowhere. After some time, it becomes clear that the people are on an orbital space station. The action shifts to 1969. In a secret government laboratory under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Department of Defense, one of the scientists reports to the general that they lost the transmission with Sarah. However, a second transmission came from the same location, but they have not yet been able to identify who made contact. The general rushes to the science department when he is informed that Agent Brighton has disappeared. Meanwhile, in orbit, the restless guy realizes that there are several other people besides them. One of them calls the girl Sarah, as he seems to know her. He introduces himself as John, and the guy introduces himself as Zach. John repeatedly tries to get Sarah's attention, but the girl is in some kind of stupor. She constantly receives memories of being tortured with electricity, and in them, John's face flashes. It turns out that this is Agent John Brighton, but even this does not bring Sarah to her senses. John cannot understand what is happening, as everything was planned differently. And Zach suddenly remembers his girlfriend in a moment of intimacy. Suddenly, Sarah calls him by the intimate name his beloved used to call him. Zach is outraged, and then the black tentacles restraining the people tighten, extracting their emotional energy and transferring it to the ship. This affects the other captives as well. Another girl, in horror, struggles in the tentacles, and the energy emanating from her is immediately absorbed by the ship. The tentacles stop glowing, and the ship calms down for a while. The agent explains that the shutdown allows the organism to survive. Otherwise, the woman would simply have died. John turns his attention to Sarah. He does not understand what was done to her, but asks her to open the door. The action shifts back to the base. The scientist explains to the general that John's transmission overlapped with Sarah's transmission. But how could this happen? After all, they disappeared 10 years apart. Meanwhile, in orbit, John tries to bring Sarah to her senses. The aliens clearly need something from all of them. Otherwise, the people would already be dead. Another man regains consciousness. He screams and tries to break free. John tries to calm him down, but the man is very irritated and does not need the agent's instructions. He struggles in the tentacles, and John warns him one last time that if he does not calm down, he will lose his limbs and bleed to death. The man named Perry gradually comes to his senses and begins to answer questions. His last memory is being in a cell when he started having stomach problems. A doctor, without entering, asked him to open his mouth and got a fountain of black vomit from the cell. John recalls that he also felt sick during transportation to orbit. Zach tries to mock John's version, but Perry advises looking around. Where could he see something like this on Earth? He knows machines, but he has never encountered anything like this. John admits that the government knew about the aliens, but why they are here and what they want is a mystery. He has to admit that he worked in the defense complex and knows quite a lot that even the FBI does not know. They know that people have been abducted for quite some time, and scientists are trying to figure out why they do it. At this moment, another unknown woman regains consciousness. She is claustrophobic and physically cannot stand being in a confined space. John asks her to close her eyes and say her name. Rhonda listens to him, but cannot calm down. Then Perry joins the conversation. He asks her to imagine a safe place where she can always hide, and the woman gradually calms down. The tentacles relax. John suggests figuring out what they have in common, which might help unravel the aliens' logic. Rhonda remembers dropping her daughter off at school and going to work. Suddenly, she felt unwell and experienced sharp pain. At that moment, another girl named Alex regains consciousness. The men explain that if she moves, she will lose her arms. And suddenly Alex recognizes Zach because he is a well-known person. He flirts, but suddenly realizes that none of the others, except Alex, know who he is. The guy names his rock band and lists the names of his musicians, but this does not make any impression. Alex admits that she remembers him from childhood when he was a celebrity, but he died long ago because his fiancée killed him. It was in all the news. There was a big investigation, and his fiancée said he dissolved in a beam of light. But then she confessed and was convicted, although his body was never found. It was about 15 years ago, more precisely in 2018. Zach is sure that Alex is under the influence of substances, otherwise her words are simply inexplicable. But Perry mocks everyone, saying it's 2050 now. Zach is shocked because it's 2001. However, Rhonda ended up here from 1997, and John is from 1969. The people are stunned by this revelation, and the tentacles immediately begin to activate, sensing their fear. Rhonda, in fear, starts to struggle, and the tentacles immediately capture and strangle her. The woman feels like she is in a closed coffin and unsuccessfully tries to get out when suddenly she feels freedom and sees Sarah in front of her. And then she finds herself in a house, looking out the window and seeing snow and a child with a sled. Sarah reminds her that this is her safe place. Meanwhile, the others see her being engulfed by the alien substance. Rhonda sees her grandmother, who suddenly warns that she will soon stop functioning, and she drives Sarah away. Rhonda asks to be allowed to return to her daughter, but the alien in the guise of her grandmother just smiles. Suddenly, Sarah becomes active. John suddenly remembers examining the girl in the laboratory in 1969, using the wreckage of the ship that fell in Roswell. At that time, she very accurately described this scene and the screaming people. He had to pull her out of the alien nest, and when she came to, she said they were coming. Now, looking at Rhonda's suffering, John realizes that Sarah can interact with all of them through time. Rhonda calms down, but now Alex starts to panic. The tentacles activate, but the girl manages to pull herself together. John explains that apparently, the ship feeds on their anger and fear. It turns out they are the fuel. The ship needs them to be afraid. That's the alien's goal. John tells how he was part of the team that discovered the wreckage of the ship near Roswell. They found a dead alien and guessed that it had telepathic control of the ship, as there was no technical control or fuel. So the alien's mind not only controlled, but also powered the ship. Apparently, the aliens managed to find a way to convert mental energy into kinetic energy. There were similar crashes in other years, allowing the U.S. government to start a UFO research program. It was then discovered that the town was infected. One of the women turned out to be pregnant, and when the child was born, they sent him to a secret research center. It was Sarah, and she was very different from ordinary people. Her brain activity was so high that new devices had to be created. At 12 years old, her telepathy with technical devices manifested. Later, she managed to establish a connection with the ship, but it happened only once because it almost killed her, and the girl never told what she saw there. John was very attached to her, and this did not please the leadership. One day, the general ordered the girl to activate the ship, affecting her with electricity, but John objected. Then he was removed. However, he could not come to terms with the idea of sending the child alone to the ship. His colleague managed to recreate alien technology, and he asked him to secretly send him after her. And here they are. However, from the very beginning, the girl was a weapon of Project Ithaca, Special Anomaly Intelligence Agent, abbreviated Sarah. And now it's very difficult to say how long they have been here. At this moment, Alex points to the awakening tentacles, which take control of each person. John finds himself in a hospital room where a mutilated woman lies in front of him, and the entering doctor mocks John, pressing on his guilt, because the accident happened because of him. His wife asked him to stop, but he ignored her pleas and kept speeding. John becomes furious, and the tentacles instantly receive a strong discharge. And in front of Perry appears his daughter, but he immediately realizes the truth and yells at her. If the aliens wanted to scare him, they would show his ex-wife. Ignoring the threats, Perry lies down to sleep while the alien counts down the days to his end. And Alex sees her mother's murder and the rapist looking for the girl she once was. But in the next moment, Sarah hits the scumbag on the head and saves Alex. The ship receives her discharge as well. John suddenly finds himself in Rhonda's grandmother's house, where he is met by an adult Sarah. She managed to create a personal channel between them and brought him to Rhonda's mental refuge. The woman's grandmother has long been dead. The aliens won't think to look for them here. Sarah warns that time is running out as she feels the connection with the ship strengthening, which is a biomechanoid controlled by an alien AI. The aliens protect the digital life hidden in the Matrix, and they feed on human emotions. And when enough energy is accumulated, they will open portals. The aliens themselves can exist in different time periods, and now they are looking for Sarah. But suddenly the girl disappears, and Rhonda's grandmother speaks to John on behalf of the aliens. They just want to go home because they are old and tired, and they start the countdown to his life. They have seen hundreds of creatures, and humans are not particularly outstanding, so they will have to be used up. But John is different. They have been watching him for a long time. This is his chance, because sometimes for the greater good, one can betray their race. Since he destroyed his wife and daughter, he has been striving for forgiveness. That's why he saved Sarah. John sees from the side how the teleporter prepares his dispatch and realizes that it did something wrong. At this time, Alex comes to and sees Sarah. She thanks her for the opportunity to avenge the murderer and rapist, even in such a way, and Sarah promises that the girl will not die here. Meanwhile, the others also regain consciousness. John tells Sarah that his teleporter was not set up and everything happened accidentally, so the aliens know everything, and they sent him here too. And then 10 years ago, when during the experiment she ended up on the ship, she saw Rhonda's death. Zach starts asking questions, and the ship immediately reacts. Sarah returns to Rhonda's mental refuge, and while the other captives suffer from discharges, the grandmother confirms that there are thousands of suffering people on the ship. But why does she sympathize with them? After all, no one pitied her except John. Her mother accidentally got infected with their spores, and now the girl has to overcome fate. But the main thing is that she has the power and can save people. Sarah finds herself on the ship again, where Perry, speaking for the aliens, promises everyone death. The human race will become extinct, but John says that humans are not like everyone else. Temporal shifts begin, with the past mingling with the future. Sarah hears John's calls to open the door, and there are also cries for help. And then she realizes that she can help humanity by sacrificing herself. The conversations that took place on the ship are repeated again and again. Everyone present on the ship seems to be floating in time, but suddenly everything stops, and Sarah announces that it will all end now because they are coming. John yells, not wanting to leave her there, but the girl says there is no other way. The people disappear, and they wake up in a winter forest. Sarah's voice narrates that people were abducted for thousands of years, suppressing their will, depriving them of their home and family, but some were capable of fighting back. Until now, the aliens had not encountered resistance and considered humans helpless. But this is not true. The people rescued from the ship look at the distant city and smile, then walk towards it. And in space, a vortex opens from which dozens of alien ships appear. This is where the film ends.